I'd like to thank my collaborators, Manish Singh, Chetan Prakash, who just spoke, Chris Fields, and Federico Fagin. And fortunately, Chetan has done a lot of the background work. It's Chetan's theorems that are the backbone for a lot of the things I'll be talking about today. Just a brief summary, what his theorems show is that the probability that we see reality as it is zero. And so the question then is, if we've been shaped by evolution not to see reality as it is, how should we think about our perceptual systems? What are they actually reporting to us? And the metaphor that I think is very helpful is the desktop interface. So when you have a desktop like your Mac or PC and you're editing an email, and the icon for the email is, say, blue and rectangular and in the lower right corner of your screen, that doesn't mean that the email itself in your computer is blue, rectangular, and in the lower right-hand corner of the computer. Anybody who thought that really misunderstands the purpose of the desktop interface. It's not there to show you reality, to show you the diodes and resistors, voltages, megabytes of software. It's there to hide the truth so that you can do what you need to do. It gives you eye candy that lets you do what you need to do. If you had to toggle voltages, you would never send your email. So that's the point. Evolution has given you a desktop interface, space and time as you perceive them. 3D space as you perceive it in this room is just your desktop. Physical objects are merely the icons on your species-specific desktop. And the whole point of space and time and physical objects is not to show you the truth, it's to hide the truth so that you don't have to deal with all that complexity and you have a little eye candy for your species that lets you do what you need to do to stay alive. Now, as Chetan mentioned, this leads to an obvious objection. Hoffman, if you think that train is just an icon on your desktop, why don't you step in front of it? And when you're dead and your theory with you, we'll know that it was more than an icon. And the reason I wouldn't step in front of the train is the same reason I wouldn't carelessly drag this icon to the trash. Not because I take it literally. The email is not blue and rectangular. But I do take it seriously. If I drag that icon to the trash can, I could lose a lot of work. And that's the point of our evolutionary perceptions. They've evolved to keep us alive, so we have to take them seriously. If you see a snake, don't touch it. If you see a cliff, don't step off. We evolved our perceptions to keep us alive, but not to show us the truth. So we have to take our perceptions seriously, but that does not mean that we have to take them literally. I take this icon seriously. I don't want to lose my file, but I don't take it literally. It's not blue, they're rectangular. So, and that's the psychological proclivity that we have, is that we assume that because we have to take everything very, very seriously, like don't step in front of that train, right? Got to take that very, very seriously, that therefore it logically entails that we have to take it literally. And that's false. There is no logical entailment. Another objection is, well, we all see the train. If we all see the train, then there must be a train, a real objective train. Otherwise, we wouldn't see it. And not really. That's another logical error. If we look at the screen here, you probably all see a cube, right? Screen is flat. The cube you see is the cube you construct. You're hallucinating a cube. We all agree that we're seeing a cube, but we're all seeing a cube because we're all members of the same species with the same kind of interface, and we make the same kinds of constructions. That's why we agree. So intersubjective agreement does not mean objective truth. It just means intersubjective agreement, and that's it. And yet, we have this psychological proclivity to say that since we all agree, it must be true. Not at all. That's another elementary logical mistake. So the way to think about physical objects is they're not indicating, so the shapes and colors and so forth of objects are not an indication of truth. They're just a convenient fiction, a standardized way of communicating to us what we need to stay alive. Just like these symbols, right? This doesn't resemble radioactivity. That doesn't resemble biohazard. They're just standard symbols that you know, don't step into that room, don't touch that stuff. And that's what they're there for. That's what evolution has given us. These very simple symbols to keep us alive, but they don't resemble reality. And for this one, I'd like to, just for a moment, to turn the lights out. Great. So, screen is flat, but you're probably seeing a 3D hat, right? So the hat that you're seeing is your construction. It's an illusion that you're creating. And you're constructing all the colors and shapes and so forth. This rectangle and that rectangle, are they the same color or different? They look quite different, right?
Same, but we see different.
That's right. They are, in fact, I used Photoshop to create this. I used the dropper tool to make sure that the pixels on this are identical to the pixels in that. And to prove it, I'm going to take this brown bar, and I'm using the dynamic tool in Keynote, so I'm not fooling with the bar. I'm just going to move it up there very, very slowly, so I'm not fooling with that bar. And there you go. So, you are hallucinating. You're not seeing the true colors. I'll do that again. That's sort of fun, right? That's right. You can watch. So what's going on is your visual system is it's constructing a reality that you can use. It's constructing an interface. In that interface, you have a 3D object. You construct a light coming from the left, which casts a shadow on this side. And then you try to construct material properties of this object. And what you say is, I'm getting the same light to my eye from here as I am from there, but this is in shadow. That's in direct illumination. Therefore, this must be a much brighter surface. And so you're putting together a story and this is how you create your interface. You don't see reality as it is. So we can have the lights back on. Yeah, right. So the relationship between our perceptions and reality is, in some sense, useful but arbitrary. What is the right perception for that molecule? That's C8H8O3 with functional groups aldehyde, hydroxyl, and ether, okay? So now, given that you know the scientific description of it, how should it be perceived? Well, it turns out we all perceive that as the taste of vanilla, right? Why should vanilla be the right taste for that molecule? It just is. That's what our species has done. We have a particular set of arbitrary interface representations for aspects of reality. Evolution isn't done with us. Our perceptual interface isn't done. 4% of us have synesthesia. There are mutations happening within our species. Our interface is evolving. Some people will see every letter as having a color or every number. Carol Steen, everything that she hears, she'll see a 3D shape. So she actually, for the word Saito, that's what the sound Saito, this is what she sees. Notice this isn't just sort of an abstract, that's a very specific, detailed 3D structure with a specific color and texture of the surface. It's very, very detailed. Evolution is playing with new interfaces all the time, very, very complex interfaces. The interface is arbitrary. As long as it has enough information, it can then guide adaptive behavior and be completely unrelated to any resemblance of truth. We think that we see reality as it is, and here's another example that we see a lot less than we think. I'm going to show you this image, a blank screen, and then the same image, but with a big change. See, what's the difference between that image and that image? I'll give you a second to see if you can find it. If you see it, raise your hand. A couple people. Okay, a couple more. By the way, there's no correlation between the time it takes you to see this and IQ. Okay. So, there's a boat right in the middle of the screen. I'll give you another chance, okay? Okay. Okay. Don't blurt it out if you see it. Don't blurt it out. How many see it so far? Okay. This one took me 40 seconds before I could find it. I'll just say you don't want to leave home without this. Okay? Okay, just check out this engine right here. Right there. Okay? So it's a big thing in the middle of the screen that's really important, and yet we don't see it right away. Okay? One more, right? Okay. Right. So The idea is that our perceptual systems are not about giving us a picture of the truth. They are there to forage for fitness. We have senses which have been designed for one thing, to forage for fitness, to get us enough fitness points to stay alive long enough to reproduce. As you look through these images, you're foraging around for information, and eventually you might see that this bar. But what's going on is you don't get like an objective picture of reality. You're foraging all the time, and your visual system has rules for finding the areas in your visual field where it might get the most information it needs right now at this moment for fitness. You can get a picture of how this works. I mean, you might think that you see the whole world in high detail. You don't. You have high detail about a thumb's width at arm's length. That's all you have a high resolution vision in. And your vision falls off so quickly. If you focus at the center dot here, you'll notice that these letters, and these letters are all roughly the same resolution. They have the same visibility. And that's because the density of your photoreceptors on your retina falls off dramatically. You have high resolution in the center, 1 or 2 degrees, and then it just falls off dramatically. And the idea is that we're using the periphery as a foraging tool to find out where to find fitness, and then we look at it and put a small bit of very, very complex resources to decode the information about fitness. So it's searching, foraging for fitness, and then just decoding what we need in this moment for fitness. Evolution is not done with us, and we are, in fact, a species that's continuing to evolve, and the way that evolution is working is perhaps very, very different than you might expect. Most of us think that we're the species that's getting the bigger and bigger brains, and that's been our niche. In fact, our brains are shrinking. Our brains were the largest 20,000 years ago, and our brains are in free fall. For the last 20,000 years, our brains have been shrinking at a meteoric rate. We've lost 10% of our brain volume. The size of a tennis ball, the volume of a tennis ball has disappeared from our brains in the last 20,000 years. So evolution couldn't care less about intelligence. It couldn't care less about big brains. It doesn't care at all about truth. It cares about one thing: keeping you alive long enough to reproduce. The reason our brains are shrinking is 20,000 years ago, we were in very, very small groups or on our own. You had to be a jack of all trades and an ace at all of them to stay alive. It was very, very brutal. If you weren't really brilliant, you died. But then we got agriculture and social networks. And all of a sudden with social networks, you don't have to be a jack of all trades to stay alive. I can go to Trader Joe's, even if I have an IQ of 70, and do just fine. 20,000 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. I would be dead. So I'm grateful for the social network. Without it, I wouldn't be alive today. But the social network takes off these selection pressures for the big brains, and as a result, we don't have them. Brains are very expensive, and if you don't need them, you don't have them. So our brains are shrinking, and they will continue to shrink. And at the rate we're going right now, in 20,000 years from now, we will have shrunk down to where we were 500,000 years ago at Homo erectus. That's what evolution does to us. So evolution doesn't care about truth. It doesn't care about big brains. It doesn't care about intelligence. It only cares about one thing. Do you act in a way that allows you to survive long enough to reproduce? End of story. And that's what shaped our perceptions. So the idea then is, it's all about fitness. Our perceptions are all about giving us information about fitness. All of our experiences are an interface to tell us about fitness. We then make decisions that allows us to choose what actions we can take to then get as much fitness as possible. That's the point of view in all of this.
Can you please describe fitness?
So from the point of view of evolution, fitness is a very important technical term. And Chetan gave you that picture of a steak. And if you ask, how does the steak enhance or not the fitness of various creatures? The answer is it depends on the organism, its state, and its action. So for a lion that's hungry, the steak can add a lot of fitness points. For the same lion that is full and looking to mate, the steak adds no fitness points at all. And for the rabbit in any state, the steak adds no fitness points. So the idea is that fitness is a function of the true state of the world, whatever the world is, the state of the organism, that particular organism, its state, and the action. It's a very, very complicated function. So to be 5,000 meters underwater is very fit for a benthic fish. For Hoffman, it's fatal. Right? So fitness varies all over the place. It does depend on the truth, but not just on the truth. And because it depends on the organism, the state, and the action, it's all over the place. And that's why when you're tuned to fitness, you're generically not tuned to truth. And that was the point of Chaitan's theorem. So fitness is a technical term in evolution, and it's the only coin of the realm in evolution. It's all about, think of it like a video game in which you're trying to collect points to stay alive and get to the next level. Those points you're collecting are the fitness points in evolution. So what this means about our perceptions of space and time and the physical world is, as Chaitan said, that the physical world as we perceive it is not the truth. It's a fiction that we create to stay alive long enough to reproduce. So this bothered Einstein when he was looking at the quantum mechanics. He said, this is Abraham Pace in 1979, talking with Einstein. He said, Einstein never ceased to ponder the meaning of the quantum theory. We often discussed his notions on objective reality. I recall that during one walk, Einstein suddenly stopped, turned to me, and asked whether I really believe that the moon exists only when I look at it. And the point of view of this interface theory is you create objects on the fly. They are not symbols of truth. They are your current symbol about fitness information. It's the fitness information you need at this moment to stay alive. So yeah, every time I look at the moon, I create the moon that I see. And there is no moon, there is no space and time until I create them. So they don't exist independent of us. So Einstein asked what it means. And what it means is, it means buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye. Right, this is I'm quoting Cypher from The Matrix. So what this theory is really saying is, yeah, all the stuff that we thought was the reality, that's what it really means. So Einstein pondered the meaning, this is the meaning. Buckle up, Dorothy. And what physicists now, so I'm coming at this with my team that I mentioned. We're coming at this from the point of view of evolutionary theory, and showing that evolution shows that we don't see reality as it is, that space and time are not fundamental, physical objects are not fundamental. Physicists themselves are coming at this from a different point of view. Nima Arkani Hamed, who is at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, just this year in a lecture in the spring said, space-time is doomed. There is no such thing as space-time fundamentally in the actual underlying description of the laws of physics. That's very startling, because what physics is supposed to be about is describing things as they happen in space and time. So if there's no space-time, it's not clear what physics is about. And this is one of the best and brightest in the field, and what they know is that for us to get a theory of quantum gravity, we have to let go of the notion that space-time is fundamental. There's something deeper that we're going to have to use as the fundamental bedrock for our description, and space-time has to emerge from it. That means that physical objects aren't fundamental either. And if physical objects aren't fundamental, then the notion of causality among physical objects is also not fundamental. What this means, to put it briefly, from The Matrix again, the Spoon Boy put it very well, there is no spoon. So space, what is it? It's our desktop. But why do we have the format of a 3D space that we have? I propose that it's an error-correcting code. The idea is that fitness is the only thing that we're interested in. It's very complicated. There's lots of fitness information. We have finite resources, and so we have to do two things. We have to do data compression and error correction to get. So our perceptual systems are entirely shaped by evolution to do data compression of fitness information and then put it in an error-correcting code. And the reason for error-correcting codes is you don't want to get your fitness information wrong. If you get it wrong, you could make the wrong choice and you could die. So what you have to do is, there's too much fitness information out there to really grasp all of it. So you get little bits. As we saw, you have to search around. You have to forage for fitness. So you get little bits of information and then you encode it. So the idea is that space, as you perceive it, you're not living in an objective 3D space that exists independent of us. You're living in the data structure. You are living in the matrix of your own data structures, error correcting code. And here's the idea. Suppose I want to send you a bit. One bit of information at a time, and the bit can be either 0 or 1. But there's a chance that the bit could be messed up. There could be noise. In which case, I need to then come up with some kind of error correcting code so that you can correct the errors. And here's a real simple, trivial code. It's called Hamming code. And instead of sending you just a single 0 or a single 1, every time I send you a bit, I'll send it 3 times. Right? So these are the real messages. The legitimate messages are 0, 0, 0 or 1, 1, 1. And if you get a 0, 0, 0, then you know I was trying to send a 0. But I sent it redundantly so that you would definitely not get an error. And if I send you 1, 1, 1, then you know definitely that I meant to send you a 1. But now, there's possibility for noise. And there's 8 possible messages that could actually come across to you, right? These are the only true messages that I want to send, but you could end up getting 1, 0, 0, in which case you can correct it back to say, well, you probably meant to send me 0, 0, 0. Right? But if you get a 1, 1, 0, then you go, well, you probably meant to send a 1, 1, 1. So what this, and I put it on this cube to show you that what I've done is I've taken one bit, which is either 0 or 1, and I've exploded it up into a 3D volume. And that's what I propose your perception of space is. You're perceiving a 3D world, not because there's an objective 3D. This is just the format of your error correcting code. You live in the data matrix for fitness.
Why is it necessary to have standard Cartesian space like that?
It's not. There's lots and lots of ways to do error correction and data compression. So there's only the vague. One thing that probably is going on is that evolution tries to do everything on the cheap. You could do far more sophisticated error correction than I just showed you. So there's going to be selection pressure to do the error correction as cheaply as possible. So there's a trade-off. You don't want to get it wrong. You want to get the right fitness messages, but you don't want to spend too much energy on error correction. And so you try to get that happy medium. So if space is an error correcting code for fitness, that means it makes a clean prediction. Think about this 3D cube that you're seeing right there. How much information could you jam into the volume of that cube? Actually, there's no volume, right? You can't stick information into the volume, right? So you're seeing a 3D cube here with a volume, but there's no way that you could actually stick information into the volume. Clean prediction of what I just said. You cannot, in the space around us, stick information into volumes. Clean prediction of what I just said. Now that might seem, that's clearly false. But it's not. So how much information could you actually stick inside, say, the volume of that volleyball? Well, you might say I could stick a terabyte hard drive in there. There may be another terabyte hard drive, and then I could maybe make them smaller. I could keep sticking information into the volume of that. What's the maximum amount of information in the ultimate that you could stick inside that volume? Well, it turns out we have an answer. Stephen Hawking answered this. And it's independent of the volume. The amount of information you can stick inside a volume of space does not at all depend on the volume. The volume is utterly irrelevant. You cannot use volume to store information. Only surface area. The amount of information is proportional to the surface area. It's called the holographic principle. It's one of the deepest, most profound discoveries in physics in the last 30 years. What this means is the following. Suppose I have a big sphere with a certain volume. I can stick as much information in it as proportional to the surface area of that sphere. But now imagine that I take 6 smaller spheres of equal size that just fit inside. I've illustrated it there. Now you can see that they have less volume than the whole sphere. In fact, they have roughly half. But they have more surface area. The 6 small spheres have less than half the volume, but they have more surface area than the big sphere. That means you can stick, and this is the universe we live in. This is not science fiction. This is not make-believe. This is not a novel. You can stick more information into those 6 spheres than you can stick into the big one. Now, if that's blowing away everything that you believe about space and time, that's my goal. That is my goal. Now, we can do this recursively. Take each one of these spheres, break it into 6, and keep doing it. Do it 20 times. Do it 30 times. After you've done it that many times, you can store a ton more information, billions of times more information, and the volume is essentially 0. That's the universe we live in. And the reason it's that way is because space is not an objective reality in which we live. It's an error-correcting code, a data structure that we inhabit. You are living in a data structure. It really is like the Matrix. So we take an evolutionary view. There are many fitness functions that are relevant to you depending on your state, the action that you need to take. You have finite memory and finite computational resources, and evolution is trying to keep them as small as possible. And in fact, it's making our brains as small as possible. We've lost 10% of our brains. Over the next 20,000 years, it's likely that we'll lose another 20%. Another 10% will probably be back to Homo erectus. So we're really trying, evolution is really trying to do things on the cheap.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How do you know what the surface area of the brain has changed though?
Yeah, so there could be more folds. What we do know is that, the critical question is, our bodies have also shrunk from the time, over the last 20,000 years. So the real thing that they look at, and this is what work by John Hawkes, an anthropologist, is that the EQ, the encephalization quotient, has gone down. So our bodies have shrunk, but our brains have shrunk faster. So that's really the thing that's going on there.
It still doesn't answer the information storage capacity.
Yeah, we don't have actually.
You don't know what the surface area of the brain is. You can't interpret that in a skull.
That's right, because we don't have the soft tissue. But we do have, actually, I knew that this had to be the case before I saw John Hawkes' work, just based on the theory of evolution itself. So we don't have the soft tissue, but we have the theory of evolution, which makes a very, very clear prediction. When there's a strong social net and the selection pressures are lowered, then the brains will get smaller. So I actually knew that this was going to be the case before it actually came out. So we don't have the soft tissue, but the theory of evolution makes a very, very clear prediction here. And in fact, another prediction that I actually made before I saw the data, and they've confirmed this with the archaeological evidence, is that the shrinkage occurred most rapidly. This is looking at fossil evidence and archaeological evidence together. It occurred most rapidly where there were the social groups. Where there were large social groups, that's when we shrunk. Clean evidence from, clean prediction from evolution. So I actually was not surprised when I read this, because I was going, this is obvious. If you know evolutionary theory, this is just obvious.
Isn't that a correlation or a causation?
Every scientific theory is fallible, absolutely. And if you have an alternative theory, that's great. Yeah.
I'm just curious, because you're speaking about space, time, physical objects, causality not being fundamental.
Right.
It seems a bit contradictory because you're seeming to be arguing that the evolutionary view of us is what sort of explains how we have these perceptual illusions. But the whole notion of being little primates running around in a vast universe that are trying to procreate seems to be describing a world that's very much about space and time and
Right.
causality. So it seems contradictory.
Very, very good. So I'll even make that objection stronger. I've used evolution to show that physical objects such as DNA and organisms and resources are not fundamental. So I've used the theory of evolution to disprove the theory of evolution, so I've shot myself in the foot. Right? So here's what I've really done. So that's a very, very sharp objection. It turns out that the physicalist assumptions of evolutionary theory are not fundamental. What is fundamental is an abstract algorithm called universal Darwinism. Variation, selection, retention. And the theorems that Chaitan proved take that heart of evolutionary theory The abstract algorithm, which Dawkins and Dennett and others have pointed out, you can use it to evolve, for example, memes and other things. So things that are abstract, that are not physical, can also evolve. So the idea is we took the heart of evolution, the key insight that if you have variation, selection, and retention, physical or not, you will have evolution. And we asked, in that situation, what is the probability that we've evolved to see reality as it is, whatever reality might be? And that's where we get the precise answer. The answer is 0. So what we've actually done, this is the power of science. We can use our scientific theory, like evolution, to actually go back and refine the very theory itself and say, you know what? This part of the theory could be fine, but this part is definitely not. The physicalist assumption that DNA and resources exist unperceived is false if the rest of the theory is true. So that's the power of science, is to actually allow us to tighten up our concepts and our theories. So the idea then is our perceptions are all about data compression, and error correction. And we're trying not to misread fitness, so we have error correcting codes. And so this is going to lead to the redundancy of space and the fact that you can't store information into volumes. It's also going to lead to symmetries. Whenever you have error correcting codes, symmetry, group theory, and symmetries are the heart of it. And so this is when physicists are looking at the symmetry groups that are critical to their physical theories, they're not looking at the objective nature of reality. They're probably looking at the symmetry groups that we happen to have evolved for our error correcting and data compressing perceptual systems. So symmetries are critical to physics, and we're studying the symmetries of our own data compression and error correction. And as Chetan proved, the symmetries of our perceptions, the fact that as I move around, I can use the Euclidean group to predict exactly what I'll see as I move around, tells us nothing about the nature of reality. Absolutely nothing at all. It does tell us, we're claiming, something about the nature of the error correcting and data compression codes that we're using. And physical objects then are a solution to the problem of representing fitness functions in a way that we can actually use. So we have all these complex fitness functions, many, many different ones, and objects like a table and a chair are not our perceptions of true physical objects that exist in reality. Objects are a solution to a data representation problem. We have all these complicated fitness functions. It's too much information for us. We have finite resources, so we need some kind of perceptual format that will give us enough information about fitness to keep us alive, but not so much information that we're overwhelmed. And objects are a solution to that optimization problem. The reason we see objects is because they are a compact format for giving us information about fitness and have nothing to do with truth. So our perceptions are satisficing representations of fitness, just enough to keep us alive. So, when I open my eyes and I have a conscious experience that I describe as a red tomato a meter away, I am interacting with some reality. But that reality is not a red tomato, and it's not in space and time. You could describe it, with digital rain. It's something utterly different than space and time and red tomatoes. As Chetan mentioned, we actually are proposing a mathematical theory of consciousness being the nature of that reality. So it's not digital rain, it's actually, we think, other conscious agents. But all of our perceptions, even a lion, and even when you're having a perception of a brain and neurons, that's a species-specific hack. It's a representation that's designed to keep us alive, not to show us the truth. And that's why when we've tried to solve the problem of consciousness and the mind-body problem by assuming that brain activity causes our conscious experiences, we've gotten nowhere. No one has been able to figure out how brain activity could cause our conscious experiences. There's actually nothing intelligent to say along that line. And the reason why is because space and time are just fictions that we use to stay alive, and physical objects are useful representations but have no causal powers. So neurons literally have no causal powers. Your brain causes none of your perceptions, none of your behaviors, and none of your emotions. Brain activity causes nothing. there is something that is causing all of that stuff. We're proposing it's conscious agents, but if you don't like that, it's just then digital rain. Some other theory needs to be put out there for what it is, because space and time and physical objects have no causal powers. They cannot explain it. This is actually can be useful. I mean, we talked about abstract stuff and consciousness and the mind-body problem, but let's get real. What's really important? So I show you some digital noise, but if I just change it up a little bit, all of a sudden you hallucinate a 3D shape, right? Right? Similarly, if I show you just some straight lines, you see a flat thing, but if I distort them a little bit, all of a sudden I can play with your visual system. Once I know the rules that you use for hallucinating space and time and 3D objects, I can actually play the system. So then I can actually do something that's really, really far more important than consciousness and the mind-body problem. I can make a woman look good in her jeans. This is one woman, and on the right, we've actually used all the tools. On the left, this is the standard finish and construction, and she looks like a completely different person on the left than the right. So once you know how to do this, you can actually play the system and do stuff that's really, really important. We're actually now, you'll see, this is important. This year, we're selling millions of these jeans. So I'll just close on, that when we're actually trying to understand consciousness and the mind-body problem, we have to look at our assumptions. All the theories that you've heard about from most people, including like Tononi's integrated information theory and Penrose and Hameroff's notion of microtubules, they all assume the reality of physical objects in space and time. And they assume that they have genuine causal powers. In Tononi's theory, the claim is that it's the causal structure of computational systems, of real physical computational systems, that then is identical to conscious experiences. And what we're saying here is absolutely not. There is no causality in space and time. So there's nothing for Tononi's theory to grab hold of. There are no causal structures. And in fact, we actually know that when you build computational systems now, if you let go of causal structure, you actually get better computation. Faster, more efficient computation when you let go of any notion of a causal structure at all. So with that, I'll stop and take questions.